year 2 for Dan Campbell. He's brought in more knee biters, namely Aiden Hutchinson, the hometown kid. But the big question is, can they continue to take steps forward and win games? We saw them lose a lot of heartbreakers last year. Can they maybe win a few more and keep building upon the momentum that Dan Campbell has created? Before we talk about what we're going to expect out of Dan Campbell this season, we are on the road to 1,000 subscribers. So if you want to see weekly NFL content, click the subscribe button and don't forget to like the video. Now we move down to the Detroit Lions, the darlings of Hard Knocks this season. Not a lot in terms of people they lost and kept. You know, they were the second worst team last year. In regards to their key losses, there's only one really, which is edge rusher Trey Flowers, who was got signed to that big contract back when Matt Patricia was their head coach, which obviously didn't work out since they let him go. And then they added a few pieces, wide receiver DJ Chark, cornerback Mike Hughes, and then in the draft grabbed edge rusher Aiden Hutchinson and wide receiver Jameson Williams. Jared Goff still there, Dan Campbell still there. So John, what are your expectations for the Detroit Lions?
I think the Lions, I mean, obviously they're still not going to be an amazing team, but I think that compared to, Chicago, I like some of the foundational things that they have on this team. So you add in a solid offensive line, which they've been building for the last couple of years. And I feel like if you're a bad team, if you start building the offensive line, that's a great thing. And so you get all those guys like Penei Sewell on the opposite side of him. You got Taylor Decker, you still got Frank Ragnow. All those guys are just going into another year where they can be more comfortable in the new schemes that they have offensively. You have DeAndre Swift, who's a young running back that's going to be progressing even more. I think Jared Goff could get more comfortable with the offense. You actually added some receiver talent. I liked the additions they had. I mean, Amon St. Brown last year was great at the end of the year. Then you add DJ Chark, a veteran who can be that deep presence for you. And then you add Jameson Williams in the draft, who right now is still dealing with an injury. And probably, I hope they don't rush him because they're not expected to be competing for a playoff spot. So there's no real reason to do so. Prioritize his health and his progression. But I just like the moves that they're making on offense. I feel like there's just this sort of philosophy from some teams when it comes to building a roster that they want to get their quarterback and then figure everything else out after that. And that's where you get teams like Chicago where, well, you had to trade up to do it. And so you gave up a first. You don't even have a first round pick from this past draft that you're able to, say that you can hang your hat on to help you improve this year. And so it's just hard to start building around them, to where I feel like the Lions are taking the opposite approach. And that is, hey, we got rid of Matthew Stafford, and we know that we're not going to immediately replace him. So let's just build the rest of the team, get a solid team, and then when we add the quarterback, then we can start competing for the playoffs. And, Jared Goff, he's very serviceable during the time that he's going to be there. I think that he's smart. He can make the right reads, the right throws, and we saw last year that he had some grit, and he can keep him in some games because although they were a pretty terrible team, there were still some games last year in which they were competing. Like even, I believe it was against the 49ers early on at like the very beginning of the season. Like they almost beat them. And that's a team that went to the NFC Championship. It was very early in the year. I think it was even week 1, but it still happened. That's something that you can hang your hat on and say, hey, we're not supposed to be a good team anyway, but we showed that we can be competitive. And I think that they're moving more in that direction. So I like the steps they took on offense. Obviously, you add Aiden Hutchinson. The guy's a beast. What can you say? He was arguably the best defensive player in the draft. Both of us had Trayvon Walker above him in terms of edge rushers, but I think that Trayvon Walker is more of a physical freak and is going to probably take a little more time to get refined to like the technical side of the NFL. To where Aiden Hutchinson, he's very sound in terms of technique. He's very overall well-balanced edge rusher, and so I think that he's going to be an instant impact player for them. So yeah, I really like what the Lions were able to do this offseason. Once again, I just think they're taking steps in the right direction, and that's all you really can do if you're a rebuilding team. And so, yeah, I'm a fan of what the Lions are doing. I think that they're going to be better than the Bears this year, just simply put, because if I'm sitting there thinking, okay, if they're going to try and upset a good team, how are they going to have to do it? For the Bears, I can't really see any route in which it happens. For the Lions, they got a great offensive line. They have a talented running back duo in DeAndre Swift and Jamal Williams. Even Craig Reynolds filled in a little bit last year and had a decent game. So they have guys who can step up. If Jameson Williams comes back healthy, he can be a game breaker. Amon St. Brown, if he progresses, he can be solid. Like they have TJ Hawkinson, a stud tight end. They have options on the offense that I'm like, okay, I can see a way in which this team can upset somebody. So yeah, I like what I'm seeing out of the Lions, and I'm excited to see how they continue to progress, because although these guys were, players that they drafted last year, even like Levi Onwuzurike, a guy who's going to go out there and bite some kneecaps, it's going to be interesting to see what they can do this year.
I really liked, like you mentioned, I like the base they're building. Good offensive line, Taylor Decker, Frank Ragnow, Penei Sewell, and then gaining some skill positions. And then if Jared Goff, I think they can actually cut loose from him after this season. They still gonna have their draft pick, which, like, I'm with you. I think it's going to be probably non-playoff draft pick, so probably top 10, top 12. And then add the Rams pick, which will probably be a later pick. So, but still 2 first-round picks to move up if they need to get their guy. If they want to move on from Jared Goff, they absolutely can. Or they can, I think they have, let's see, after there's 3 first-round picks, I forget. But nonetheless, they can move up, get their quarterback they want this next offseason, and they can build with this season. They can slowly bring back Jameson Williams, like you mentioned, coming off the ACL. And then the defense, too, they can hopefully figure some things out there. I like their front 4. Like you mentioned, obviously, Aiden Hutchinson, very good. Levi Onwuzurike was a guy I was high on, especially for a defensive tackle. And then we just really have to see the secondary. Like, they have to get more clarity on that.
Just real quick on that, very, very crucial year for Jeff Okudah.
I'm about to say, yeah, Jeff, like, we need to, this is, like I said, year 3 is usually where they want to see is a big determination year. Usually by year 3 or 4, NFL, NBA, we know who you are, basically, especially when you've been in the same organization. So we'll see if, I know health's been a little bit of an issue for Jeff, so hopefully he can stay healthy so we can fully prove that he was worthy of that top pick and, can live up to the expectations set by the organization. But if not, once again, then at least they know, okay, we have to address this, in the off season. But yeah, I think very much like last year, this is going to be a team that's going to be in a couple of games, especially, because of their offensive and defensive lines. But just because they lack, especially on defense, some sizzle in regards to their skill position guys, going to lose a few games or majority of their games. And that's what I want to say instead. I think lose the majority of their games and, probably still be at the bottom of the draft. But I think it'll be much more encouraging going into next year. We'll probably see them maybe take a few shots. Obviously, I think Jared Goff's the main domino in regards to what they'll do. I know I'm looking way ahead, but, we'll see what happens with him. But nonetheless, I like myself, and I think John as well, we like the base that Detroit's building. It's Chicago. Take notes if you can. I know Chicago's a little bit different situation. But, I feel like Detroit's doing what Chicago should have done or, should be doing more in regards to supporting their young quarterback. So we'll see what happens in Detroit. Obviously, the stars of Hard Knocks, and we'll see if, they can get a little more respect and such. And hopefully for Dan Campbell's sake, they can.